Welcome inside the Butler's Pantry, the hottest sports talk radio show, serving you with the freshest stories, the juiciest topics. And now, your host, Brendan the Butler Boylan.
And welcome inside the Butler's Pantry, our first episode here on the Saints News Network. This is your host, Brendan the Butler Boylan. It's been a little bit, guys. I think the last time I was on the show, I've done a couple different Houdat confessionals here on the station with you guys, but to fill you guys in and people who are just hearing my voice for the first time, I'm Brendan Boylan. I've been a part of the Saints News Network for, almost 3 years now. Originally a co-host on The Professor Speaks with the late Derek Stevens, a true opportunity and blessing to get to know him and Kyle T. Mosley, who you guys hear every so often here on Saints News Radio Network. The two of them really able to take me under their wing the last 3 years as I've started my broadcast journey. And it's just been a true honor and blessing to be on this network and be with these guys on a weekly basis. So this is what the show is. The show comes over from a radio station called WGWG.org, based out of Shelby, North Carolina, which was not far from where I am the play-by-play voice of the Gardner Webb Running Bulldog. So all of you guys who came over from WGWG over to the Saints News Network, I thank you. It's been a fun little ride. I did the Butler's Pantry over in Shelby for 2 years, and now we're here on the Saints News Radio Network. So some of you might be asking, well, what does this show look like? What are we going to be doing here on this show? Now, it is the Saints News Network, and trust me, I plan on talking a lot of New Orleans Saints football. However, we're changing it up. We're giving something a little new to the Saints News Network fans and family. We're going to do a show that is Saints-related. However, we're going to touch on a lot of different topics, whether it be the NBA, whether it be the NCAA, with as of recently all the different allegations coming out of Ohio State. I wanted to give you guys a show that hit a little bit more than just the Saints, just something that we could go ahead and produce to you guys that was a little different. Now, that doesn't take away from anything these other guys have done. Let's talk about Bob Rose. We got Barry, who's been writing for the website. If I can touch half of what they have done for this network, it would be huge. I think it would be a great thing. Those guys, Kyle T. Mosley, and all the shows and all the guys we've had hosting and writing in and out of this network, it's been fantastic. So my goal here is to just provide you guys with something a little bit different on the network, but also make sure I'm putting in as much quality as I possibly can into the network and into the show, as Bob Rose has with the Bayou Blitz. If you guys haven't tuned into that yet, make sure you do. It's fantastic, and Bob's done a fantastic job since he joined the network here. And it wasn't too long ago that I remember Bob coming in for the very first time on the network, and he's just done a tremendous job since he's been given his own show with the Bayou Blitz. And here I am now sitting a little bit later with my own show. It's been a long time in the works. I know Derek, while he was still here with us, he really was pushing for me to have my own show. But while I was finishing my undergraduate degree and while I was a full-time play-by-play broadcaster, as I still am at Gardner Webb University, a lot of things became a little more difficult, and a lot of things just didn't fall into place. But now that I've finished my undergrad in communications and broadcast journalism, and I'm broadcasting at Gardner Webb, it opened up a little bit of time, and after some talk with Kyle, I think we both agreed it was about time that I came back on the air full-time, and I'm extremely excited to be back with my Saints News family. So the Butler's Pantry. The Butler was a nickname that I got kind of out of the blue. I was a color analyst at the time for women's basketball here at Gardner Webb, and I came in a three-piece suit to a ball game, ready to commentate. And our play-by-play broadcaster at the time, it was a guy by the name of Jared Pankhurst, who I actually get to see tomorrow. I'm very excited. I haven't seen him in over a year. He looked at me. He came in a corduroy jacket, kind of a professor look. And he looked at me and he said, Brendan, I didn't know you had a butler job on the side. And he introduced me to that broadcast when we got our got our pregame stuff going. He introduced me as Brendan the Butler Boylan. So It just kind of stuck when I went to conference tournaments and things, and now it's made its full way around to being the title of my show, and I'm extremely excited for all that. So again, I want to thank Kyle T. Mosley for the opportunity. I want to thank you guys for all their support, all the listeners that I have now, and all the listeners I will gain. I want to thank you guys for just taking the time to hear a 22-year-old's voice talk about football, something that I'm so passionate about, along with a lot of different sports. So let's just go ahead and dive in here to the Butler's Pantry Week. I could catch you guys up on a lot, but you guys have heard all about the NBA and free agency. I'm sure a lot of you guys have tuned in the last few days to hear about Urban Meyer and the speculation and accusations facing the Ohio State University football program. But I do want to start with our hometown team. I do want to start with the New Orleans Saints and go from there. Now, you look at the Saints draft, and it was another draft where I think we found some really key pieces. You look at how a franchise can change over the last few drafts, and if you take away last year's draft and the draft that just happened, you look at the last few years, the Saints had not really drafted well. You look at 2014, for example, there's not a single player left on the Saints roster that was drafted in 2014. That was the Brandon Cooks draft. It's just a crazy number. The Saints weren't really hitting home runs in the draft, and all of a sudden you go, wow, well, Marshawn Lattimore, Defensive Rookie of the Year. You get Alvin Kamara, who's just been an incredible piece to this team. He's been, he gets all those comparisons to Darren Sproles and Reggie Bush, but he's so unique and he's so different that he brings so much more to the table. And there you go, the Offensive Rookie of the Year. Ryan Ramczyk's been fantastic. For New Orleans, and the line's kind of moved around. It's been really good. And you look at this past draft, Marcus Davenport, even though he's been a little banged up here in camp, man, oh man. I know we gave up a lot. We gave up next year's first-round pick and to go up and get him, but he looks like a guy who could really help on the edge, something we really haven't had since Junior Gillette. And I know a lot of people going, let's not bring up that name, but yeah, since Junior Gillette, we haven't had someone the opposite side of Cam Jordan who's really made an impact. And you go and you look at our third-round pick in Traquan Smith, who's been, quote-unquote, the star of Saints camp so far. Just another receiver. Isn't it funny? It seems year after year after year we have these receivers come in and they're showing wonderful progression and what they can do at the next level. You look at Michael Thomas just a few years ago. Wow, Michael Thomas. Who would have thought that Michael Thomas was going to be, I wouldn't say who would have thought he would have been that good, but to break records like he has, whether it be Marcus Colston's rookie records, whether it be Odell Beckham Jr.'s record for most receptions in his first 2 years in the league, Michael Thomas is one of those guys that needs to be up there as one of the best receivers in football, but unfortunately just hasn't fell into that category to the general public quite yet, and Traquan Smith's been lighting it up in camp so far, folks. You look at what some of these guys have to say, and I know Barry, who's been writing and working his tail off to get articles out for you guys day after day after day on Saints News Network, has actually been in camp, and he's been so impressed with some of these guys. But Traquan Smith, he said he's not surprised, hasn't surprised himself so far over the first few days of camp, and it's just normal for him, and there's still a lot to be seen. Now that gets me excited. That gets me extremely excited as a Saints fan, as someone who is in New Orleans media with you guys, to know that Drew Brees is going to have another weapon. And I know some people always scratch their heads when receivers get brought up. It seems the last few years a big need on the draft boards or in free agency. Well, the Saints need receivers. And you look at last year and you go, well, Michael Thomas, who we've already spoken about, I thought Ted Ginn had a year. A lot of us weren't seeing in the future for Ted Ginn, a guy who did a lot more than just take the top off. Now, that's what we remember of him. But let's go to that Minnesota Vikings game in the playoffs, and he had some big catches on third down, some big catches over the middle throughout the course of the season. One of the big home run balls that comes to mind is the game against the Falcons in the Superdome right before the half. Able to just create separation from Desmond Trufant there and go and score a big touchdown for the team. He was exciting. He was something different. Traquan Smith, I see bringing a lot of speed, a lot of highlight catches so far in camp. Just another weapon for Drew Brees. And I remember tweeting it and because Twitter is such a valid source in today's modern day society. Is I remember tweeting right after Michael Thomas got drafted, I said, you can't go wrong with getting Drew another weapon. And I said the same thing here with Traquan Smith. I'm excited for what he can do. Let's not forget about just going through the receiving corps. Is just, how about Cam Meredith, a guy who had a really good season for the Bears, a breakout year, and then the next season goes and tears his ACL, and the Saints offered to the restricted free agent, and the Bears didn't match, so it looks like possibly another big win for the New Orleans Saints in that category. In the receiving corps, they pick up Brandon Tate and Michael Floyd, who you can make the argument that are camp bodies, but at the same time, you never know what the preseason can do. You never know who's going to make a roster through the preseason. The Saints, I would say, very strong in the receiver category. We haven't even talked about Austin Carr, who was a superstar of the preseason for the Patriots last year. I believe he was only active for a few games, including the playoff loss to the Minnesota Vikings last season. Tommy Lee Lewis, a guy who returns kicks. He scored his first career touchdown. I believe that was Thursday night in Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. A nice little tiptoe step-back move on the sideline. Those are guys we still haven't even mentioned. You go, wow, the Saints can only keep so many receivers. What's going to happen? That's one thing I look for in training camp. The quarterback battle, if there really is a battle for the backup position. You got Tom Savage coming over from the Houston Texans. Taysom Hill, who became a little bit of a fan favorite because of what he's able to do on special teams. And then just an interesting story in J.T. Barrett, who originally verbally agreed to a deal as an undrafted free agent with the Indianapolis Colts, and then said, no, never mind, and came and signed a 3-year contract with the New Orleans Saints. A little bit of struggles so far, but a guy I could either see on the practice squad or potentially, if he's able to outwork Tom Savage, I think that is a possibility as well. I think Taysom Hill's got to stay on the roster just because of what he's able to do in a couple different spots, whether it be special teams. Remember, we saw him block a punt last year, and Sean Payton sure likes the kid, which is a good thing at backup quarterback. If we remember how much Sean Payton liked a guy by the name of Garrett Grayson a couple years ago, let's just say that didn't go over too smoothly. But I'm excited for the Saints. I think there's some high expectations for the Saints. Offensively, we always know where they're going to be at. If it's a Drew Brees, Sean Payton team, they're going to finish in the top 5 offensively every year. We've seen that consistently since 2006. As you have to go, wow, it's been over a decade that these two have been together. The backfield, it's going to be a little interesting the first couple weeks of the season, having Mark Ingram suspended for performance-enhancing drugs. A lot of people say, oh, it's fine, we got Alvin Kamara. Yeah, but for me, Kamara is such a different back. Kamara is such a specialty back, you don't want to run him into the ground. I don't think he's a guy like Ingram. You saw Ingram get 20 touches some games, 20 handoffs, 20 just rush attempts, opposed to Kamara, who could very well have 20 touches in the game, but he might have 10 of those as receptions. I think you look at a guy like Edmonds to fill that role. Terrence West was signed. I'm not sure if Terrence will even make the roster if he's just, a quote-unquote camp body. But to see somebody be more of a pounder and a bruiser inside the first 4 weeks of the season will be interesting. None of those games are easy at the beginning of the year. You start off Tampa, and no Jameis Winston, but still a divisional game, always difficult. Cleveland's a completely different team. I don't care what people say. I think Cleveland's a team that could very well turn around and make the playoffs this year. I was surprised that even Cleveland went 0-16 last year. I thought that team had more talent than an 0-16 team. You always want to compare with the Lions that went 0-16, and that Lions team just didn't have talent. I felt like these Browns team did have talent, and they were just starting to put some things together at the end. I think the Browns are in for a better season than a lot of people think. You get the New York Giants, and man, Saquon Barkley's got high expectations, but he is a one-of-a-kind home run type of back. Always scary. Eli, though a lot of people aren't fond of Eli and don't think Eli deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, I really do think Eli deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, but we'll have to see how his progression is. Is he going to continue to progress down? Is he going to do a little bit of a roller coaster ride here at the end of his career? And of course, Odell Beckham Jr. on that team as well. And then you have the Atlanta Falcons, and let's just put it this way: the Falcons are our rivals for a reason. I don't care if the Falcons are going to go 0-16, the Saints go 16-0. It's always going to be a tight one. between those two, and the Falcons and the Saints are going to be racing for that NFC South title, so that's a very important game there in Week 4, and you're not going to have Mark Ingram, so it's going to be an interesting thing to see, especially as we inch closer to the preseason, the kind of things that we see in the preseason with some of the starters, whether Kamara's going to get majority of the touches, or if we see Edmonds or Terrence West get some touches there with the first unit in the preseason. Going to the defensive side of the ball, talking about the offense, and the offense always going to be fantastic. But the defense really turned a corner last year. A lot of that had to do with Marshawn Lattimore, of course, the Boont gang coming in and doing something we haven't seen in a long time, and that's create turnovers. That Saints defense over the last couple of years just known to give up big plays, not really force turnovers, force takeaways. I've always been told there's a difference between a takeaway and a turnover, and the Saints really had takeaways last year on the defensive side of the ball, and there's one signing on the defensive side of the ball I think a lot of us are just forgetting about, whether it just be because Marshawn Lattimore and Ken Crawley were so good last year, they continue to be good in cat. But how about Patrick Robinson coming back? And P-Rob left and went to Philly, and he was just a different guy. You remember those times early in his career with New Orleans, drafted him after winning the Super Bowl. So he was the 32nd pick of the 2010 draft. And he had his highs and his lows in New Orleans, but a lot more lows. He had a couple nice interceptions. One that I remember distinctively is an interception, I believe it was against Tampa Bay, where he essentially ran the route for the receiver and then dove and made this over-the-shoulder interception. He had his highs, he had his lows, but then he went to Philly, just became a different guy. He won a Super Bowl. And that's going to be your slot corner next year, something the Saints have really struggled to find. Remember, there was times over the last few years we even had Kenny Vaccaro playing slot corner, so it's nice to have P-Rob there. I think he's going to make a big difference for the Saints, and of course you now have your three safety look, something that has become a staple in New Orleans Saints defense in recent memory. You get Kurt Coleman over from Carolina, Von Bell, Marcus Williams is still going to be back there, who's just a pure ball hawk of a safety. That secondary is looking really good right now. And of course, I already brought up Marcus Davenport of the defensive line, but how about this? Alex Okafor has really, really impressed so far in camp after tearing his Achilles, and the Achilles injury is always a difficult one. It's one that you don't know how you're going to bounce back from that. Is it going to cripple you to ending your career early? Is it going to be something that is just always a nagging issue? But right now it looks like Okafor has been very good, healthy participant the last few practices, and reportedly had a monster practice today. 3 straight pressures at one point, including at least 1 sack and 1 forced holding penalty. I mean, yes, it's training camp. Let's not get too excited, but to see that he's coming back from that Achilles injury after, in my opinion, playing extremely well during the season, opposite side of Cam Jordan, and we saw some of the productivity of the defensive line go down because Alex Okafor got hurt last year. That's a really refreshing sign. Heard a lot of good things out of Onyemata in the middle, becoming a big force, and Sheldon Rankins being quote-unquote unstoppable so far in training camp. It's just a lot of great things we're hearing in training camp about the defense. Now, the linebackers might be the quote-unquote weakest part. You have Klein coming back, Manti Te'o's there, Davis, the big signee from the Jets, Craig Robertson. You have a lot of names that you're familiar with and that you know, but you still have to see it gel together on the field. And personally, I really liked Manti Te'o last year when he had to step up and come in, and he's great reading the run, and he had a lot of good moments for the Saints last year. I'm really excited about this team, and of course, you have yesterday, you have the Hall of Fame game. We finally get football for the first time in what seems like forever, just as every offseason goes. So coming up soon, you have your first preseason game for the New Orleans Saints. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be an interesting ride, and it's going to be interesting to see who makes this team and who doesn't, and also just to see guys in a Saints uniform for the first time. My big one is Cam Meredith. I really want to see what Meredith can do after tearing his ACL. A really productive guy for the Bears a few years ago. But let's wrap up this Saints discussion, just kind of move forward. I didn't want to keep you guys too long today. Only a 30-minute podcast. Or it's actually live today. It's not what we plan on doing. We plan on podcasting it, but today is a little different. We're going live. But just 30 minutes, little intro to show you guys, talk about myself, what the show is, and just talk a little bit of sports. We talk about the Saints. Let's go ahead and move over to the NBA. Now, the big thing is LeBron James going to LA, but if you ask me, who didn't see that coming? That was a no-brainer. When you look at the New Orleans Pelicans, to lose DeMarcus Cousins the way that you do hurts a little bit. He offered 2 years, $40 million. At the end of the year, he declines that. He doesn't get any offers in free agency, and then he's the one who calls the Golden State Warriors and goes, "Hey, do you guys need any help? I'm available." Signs the minimum. That hurts. You get Julius Randle. It's not a bad player. I think Julius Randle's a little bit of a tweener. Still trying to figure out what he can do in the league. I love Drew Holiday, and of course with Anthony Davis, that's a playoff team right there. That is a playoff team right there. But I think the biggest thing recently has been the Kawhi Leonard trade. Now, we saw that coming. We knew the relationship between Pop and Kawhi was very disgruntled, and you didn't really know what was going to happen. I thought moving on from Tony Parker may have allowed Kawhi to feel a little bit better about staying, especially because the two of them, not really getting into it, but I think more Tony Parker saying, you know what, I played through a similar injury, and I was fine. Kawhi got cleared by the doctors. I don't know why he's sitting out. Tony Parker goes and signs, near me, the Charlotte Hornets, and from there, Kawhi, I was thinking maybe Kawhi will stay. If they offer him the max, maybe he'll stay. And they go and they trade him to Toronto. Now, that is one takeaway. Is Toronto still going to be the same team? But to trade DeMar DeRozan, oh man. Meeting a lot of these guys throughout the last couple years, by far, I think DeMar DeRozan was one of the nicest, humble, down-to-earth NBA players I've ever met. And a guy who loved playing in Toronto, a guy who is the all-time scoring leader in Raptors history, a guy who has been an all-star starter, multi-time all-star. Lowry and DeRozan, that's just what we knew. That was one of the most underrated backcourts in the NBA, and just like that, boom, gone. I think they did him dirty. I think we can all agree that it was a little dirty the way that DeMar DeRozan was done. But he gets a good opportunity in San Antonio. That's a team that is in the playoffs year in and year out. Let's be honest, they are the quote-unquote New England Patriots of the NBA, for lack of a better term. They're there year in and year out. But looking at Kawhi going to Toronto and going into the Eastern Conference, one Eastern Conference player said it's wide open. It's a wide open East. And I said, no, Boston's healthy. That's scary. Boston just being healthy is a very scary thing. That you lose Kyrie towards the end of it. You didn't have Gordon Hayward. Guys just banged up, and they still were a game away from the finals. Boston's scary. And Scary Terry might not even get that many minutes, and they're still going to be a scary team. You look at Toronto, and you have to put them up there. Heck, they won over 50 games last year, right? Got to put them up there, even with DeRozan gone. If Kawhi's healthy, oh my goodness, the best two-way player in basketball. Have to put him up there. Philly's a team that I look at and go, man, Philly's young. Philly's still got to figure it out, but Philly's young. They're talented. Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid. We really haven't seen a lot of Markelle Fultz yet. That's a good team. And I'd even throw Indiana up there. Indiana goes and gets, I believe, Tyreek Evans, Doug McDermott, which replaces Lance Stevenson. I never thought Lance Stevenson should have walked. But man, they get Drew Holiday's brother. They get Aaron Holiday, right, in the draft from UCLA to play point guard. And Victor Oladipo, the most improved player. Man, did Oladipo look like a superstar last year. I think that's a team that can be very good. I don't think the East is wide open, even though LeBron left for LA and this whole DeMar DeRozan trade. No. I think it's going to be very competitive. There's going to be 5-6 teams there at the top that in the playoffs you can look at and go, man, maybe this team is a team that can go far. You know, I still think we're seeing the prime of Giannis Antetokounmpo. And what can Budenholzer, who just came up from Atlanta, do for that team? Malcolm Brogdon, the Rookie of the Year, Eric Bledsoe, who's a very good point guard. You lose Jabari Parker, but a guy you really hadn't had lately, and you're still making the playoffs, and you're still having competitive series. I'd put the Bucks up there. Another team. Good. A good team. And you look out west, and the West, I think, it's hard because you have such a difference in power and a gap in power between like the Warriors and the Rockets are going to be up there. And you might throw San Antonio there, the top three teams, but then the Pelicans, the Jazz, the Nuggets, I think, are up on the rise. The Timberwolves have too much talent not to be good. The NBA, I still think, is interesting in the aspect of who's going to take the Warriors down. You go, man, Brendan, what are you talking about? The Warriors, you got Curry, Clay, KD, Draymond. Now you got DeMarcus Cousins. Is that even fair? No, probably not. That's a team. That's a dream team you throw together in 2K overnight, right? That is a video game good team. But what I'm going to be interested in this year, next year, however long it's going to take, what's the team that dethrones the Warriors? We got so close last year with Houston. I believe if Chris Paul didn't get hurt, that's a much different series. But who's going to dethrone them? I think that's going to be the most interesting thing moving forward. And I'm going to be honest, guys, down in New Orleans, that's not a bad basketball team at all. I think they're a couple pieces away. And the fact that you have a guy like Anthony Davis who is locked up for as long as he is, and he sounds like he wants to stay in New Orleans, that's something that goes second to none here in today's league. It's something that is going to keep this team afloat and keep this team very good over the next couple years. And though it stunk that he didn't get that All-NBA team, he doesn't get that massive bonus. And it saves you guys a little bit of money. Let's talk about one more thing before I go off the air. Like I said, keeping it short, only about 30 minutes here today's show. The whole Urban Meyer situation, he says, I quote, failed in denying I heard allegations. The whole Zach Smith thing, it's an interesting thing because you hear about here in, I believe it was the 2015 conversations and all this stuff that, well, ex-assistant coach Zach Smith has gotten some domestic violence altercations with his wife, right? Now, never okay. Domestic violence, never okay. I think that's something that we can all agree to in today's world is a man should never put his hands on a woman, right? But I think also you have to say vice versa. I mean, domestic violence, whether man on woman or woman on man, that's not okay. And not saying anything, not okay either, right? You always hear it, if you see something, dial this number, right? You see those ads all the time. If you see it, say something about it. Whether it be something illegal, whether it be bullying, right? We can all go back to our high school days and go, oh, but bullying, we were supposed to speak up and say something, right? And I think this is more of a moral issue than it is like a coaching issue. Morally, I think Urban Meyer should have said something, right? That's not something that you just go, in one ear and out the other. I think that's something that needs to be brought to somebody's attention. However, should Urban Meyer lose his job over this? I don't think so. I don't think this is a issue that causes someone to lose their job. You know, I don't think... You talk about other investigations and allegations come out of this. This isn't a Sandusky situation. This isn't a Penn State situation. This isn't a Purdy situation. But it's certainly not that. Should have spoken up. Smith came out and said Meyer knew about an 2009 incident, conversation in 2015. I think it hurts Urban Meyer saying that He lied at media day that he followed protocol. You know, I'm going to make a stretch comparison. Lying. I'm going to make a stretch comparison to baseball. If someone takes steroids in baseball and lies about it, I have no respect for them. If a guy goes, I took steroids and I admit it, a little more respect to you. You still cheated, right? But I have a little more respect for you because you manned up and you owned it. In this situation, you have Urban Meyer who doesn't man up and own the fact that he didn't go through protocol. He lied about it. I think that's going to hurt Urban Meyer's chances of actually keeping his job. Personally, I don't think he should get fired. However, you have to morally look in the mirror at some point, right? You have to look at the mirror at yourself one day and go, man, I didn't say anything about this, I didn't say anything about that. There should be some guilt there. I don't think he deserves to lose his job, and I think this is really bad for the Ohio State program going right before the season starts too. But this is a situation that's so much more than football. I think the biggest thing you can take away from this, guys, is two things. One, just don't lie. You learn that as a child. Don't lie. Your parents tell you that. They sit you down and they go, kid, lying is bad. Lying is a sin. Don't do it. Right? But the second thing is, if you see something or you even hear something like this, you gotta say something about it. You have to. Whether it's your friend, neighbor, someone you barely know, you have to say something about it. And Urban Meyer was already in some deep water by not saying anything, but now lying at media day and coming out and saying, well, I lied. That's even deeper water. And we'll just have to see how all of this plays out moving forward. Well, guys, thanks so much for tuning in to your introduction to the Butler's Pantry. Again, this is Brendan the Butler Boylan. We'll be podcasting this show opposed to doing it live typically. Just another big thanks to Kyle T. Mosley, Barry, Bob, everybody at the Saints News family. Thank you guys, the listeners, for welcoming me back with open arms. I've had a couple different people message me and just be happy to know that I'm back on the air after a brief hiatus after losing a friend and a co-host. So I thank you guys for that. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you to anybody who is an old listener or a new listener. I'm just happy to sit here and talk to you guys about sports. Any suggestions or anything, you can follow myself on Twitter. It's BT Boylan. It's BTBOYLAN. We have the Butler's Pantry's own Twitter. That's BB Butler's Pantry. And of course we have Instagram as well. Working on getting a Facebook page up. But again, thank you guys so much for tuning in to the Butler's Pantry. This is Brendan the Butler Boylan. You'll learn this soon, guys, if you didn't come over from the WGWG show. Peace, love, and positivity always. We'll see you next time.